Mr. Bob Davis, good morning. How are you, sir?
Good, buddy. How are you?
I'm good, man. Hey, I really need to apologize to you about what happened with our first encounter together. Uh, for the audience listening and watching, our audio and video were totally jacked. It was bad to the point that I needed to scrap it. So Bob and I originally got together back in like August and did a session, had an episode, and had a good time doing it. But then in post, when I got to it, it just the it was laggy, it was glitchy, it wasn't very good. So we're gonna run it back. We're gonna do it again, and just like we've always done here on the show, it's totally unscripted. We're not trying to recreate it. We're not trying to remake it. We're just gonna have a new conversation with the same topic. So Bob, remind our audience what we were talking about before.
The last time we were talking, we were going over some of the things that people are unaware of with DIC, which is disseminated intravascular coagulation. And it's a rare blood disorder. It affects like 20,000 people a year. And basically, my experience with it was my mom had passed away from it back in 2018. And it's a relatively known throughout the medical industry disorder, but there is no precursors. There's no exact medication. It's a mixture of 4 or 5 tests to determine if somebody has it. So with you being in the medical field and starting your podcast, we kind of decided it was going to be a good conversation piece for us. And last time we talked, I got a lot of good information from you on kind of the processes and what people deal with on that side.
Yeah.
And then as far as myself, just going over kind of my personal experience with it and then just kind of sprouted from there.
So so let me extend my condolences to you again, Bobby. Like
Oh, you're good, man.
It is one of the hardest things in the world for a child to lose their parent. I feel you and I understand your pain. I lost my dad at 12, so I know that feeling and it's hard.
Yeah, it's a club nobody wants to be in, man.
And that's exactly right.
It's
That's
just
exactly
yep.
right. It,
Yeah.
in much, in much the same way parents say, no parent should ever have to bury their child. Boy, you could flip that around. No child ever wants to bury their parent. It's incredibly difficult.
It's one of those things, I guess, everybody always pictures, 80, 90 years old, really long life,
Yeah.
all these, wrapped up movie things that they put into it. And then, you always hear movies talking about, well, I lost this person when I was young. And they kind of like, every little adaptation is different for everybody. But nobody really ever talks about like from when it happens to the progress of what people go through.
Yeah.
And unless you've been through it, there's really no way to explain it to anybody. And it's
Yeah.
just, it's one of those
It's
things.
incredibly hard.
Yeah.
Now, remind me what exactly were the circumstances behind your mom or behind finding out about DIC with your mom?
Mine wasn't after the fact. So we waited, it was forever. I can't remember how long it was. It was months when we waited for the autopsy report to come back. And I guess that's a standard thing. Like if you always see movies where like autopsy report the next day, and it's not like that
No, it's
as
not
far
like
as for
that.
the regular public. So we waited a while, but we actually didn't find out about it until after she had passed away. So we didn't know what the situation was. But she had liver cancer and cirrhosis and something else that I can't remember what. She battled hepatitis for years and
Okay.
went through several experimental treatments with that. So they finally determined with the cancer and everything, she was supposed to have a liver transplant. And then we waited through the list and went through that. And they called her up, and it was like one day later, she was up there prepped for the surgery. And the transplant went great. And then she started to have the complications from the DIC.
Yeah.
And basically, an explanation, I guess I didn't say anything about it. With the DIC, it's a bleeding disorder. So basically, your body's doing two things at once. It's trying to clot blood and it's trying to thin blood. So the complications with DIC is developing enzymes and proteins and stuff to break down and to clot. And depending on the severity of the DIC, her instance was it was completely throughout her whole body. And they had
Yeah.
done testing and determined it was a negative result for, I guess, chances is how it works as far as the different complications she could have.
Right.
But once it hit, it was just, I think it was a matter of like 2.5, 3 hours. It was over. They
Yeah.
started to work the tests and work the problems. So for us, we waited to find out with the autopsy report. And then that's when I kind of got information because we had a family friend that gave us, she's a nurse, but she gave us kind of a rundown of what it is. And she was exactly what I've read is they know it exists, but they have no idea where it comes from. And
Yeah.
that's kind of the tough part with it.
It's super sneaky and it's super suspicious. Like, not suspicious, that's probably not the right word. It's definitely a super sneaky thing.
Mhm.
Where and where there's no exact test for it, that's what makes it so sneaky.
Yep.
um and all the pre-surgery testing stuff, it only gives you likelihood or chances or kind of precursor stuff. It doesn't give you, yes, you are, you know the chances of you bleeding to death are exceptionally high. They don't, it's not like that. And
Yep.
yeah. So D, almost exactly as you explained it, DIC is a thing where your body uses up all of its clotting factors. Everything that the body uses to create clots, your body burns through it like that. It goes through it really fast. So while your body is trying to stop the bleeding, your body burns through all of it, and then you actively bleed to death inside. Um, I can only imagine how horrendous it might be for a person that experiences that, because not you go from internal bleeding to you know multi-organ failure and ultimately to death. and,
Yep.
and really the only treatments are to try to stop the bleed, right?
Yep.
So you're trying to replace platelets, you're trying to give blood thickening medication, everything that you can give to try to replace those clotting factors, you do. And really and truly, depending on the hospital and depending on your state and where you're at, the hospital that I work at, we're what's designated as a level 4 trauma center. So we can work on you, we can take care of you, we can stabilize you. Um, but really and truly, if you are in trouble and you're in need of blood, we're not the hospital for you. We've got to send you away, or we've got to get a courier to go to a neighboring hospital and go borrow blood from them.
Oh, wow.
So,
I make that had to make for interesting situations for you guys.
and it happens. It happens. You get some farmer. My hospital serves a more rural and agricultural population,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
You and I grew up in that kind of setting. Growing up in West Virginia, people using tractors, people using ATVs. There's all
A lot of
kinds of nasty
ATVs.
things that can happen in the backwoods, right? Where I'm at now, we're an agricultural community. Lots of farmers, lots of dairy, lots of folks with tractors. Um, some folks that come in with some pretty mangled parts every once in a while.
I bet.
And when those folks need blood, we can give them blood. There's just not a whole lot of it to go around until we can get them to a much bigger hospital, um, about 60 miles down the road. And typically that ride happens in a helicopter.
Yeah.
So,
Um, how does the levels work? That's the first time I've ever heard of that when you have like level 4 trauma centers.
yep. So it's kind of backwards. Like, you think of a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being really low and 10 being really high. This one's backwards.
Okay.
So technically you have level 5 trauma centers, which are band-aids and boo-boos.
Yeah.
And like, if you come in with much more than a splinter, they're gonna send you away. Okay.
Okay.
Then you have level 4s, which is my hospital, and it means that we have a bump in services. It means that we have a fully staffed emergency room. You've got 2 trauma certified nurses. You've got a board certified emergency room physician, and you've got a surgeon available within 30 minutes.
Gotcha.
And then you get level 3. Level 3 is all that stuff. And then you have access to an ICU, an intensive care unit. Level 2s are your big trauma centers where you have 24-hour on-call surgery. You have instant access to an operating room. They're the big hospitals, right?
Okay.
Level 1 trauma centers are teaching hospitals. They're university hospitals. If you think of the University of Kentucky or Ruby Memorial Hospital in Morgantown, West Virginia, those would be level 1s. I'm guessing, but I would assume that those would be level 1 trauma centers because they're teaching institutions, right?
Yeah.
So that's the difference between level 2 and level 1 is it's a teaching hospital.
Okay. Well, she was actually in Ohio University.
Yeah,
there.
Definitely.
So I assume it probably level 1.
So are you talking about Ohio State or OU?
Ohio State.
In Columbus.
Up in Columbus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Definitely level 1.
Okay.
Definitely level 1. And for our area where we grew up in, there's West Virginia, Ohio, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, Maryland on the very eastern side. The way these hospital networks operate, they're pretty tight knit. But in our community where we grew up in Parkersburg, you either went to Columbus, to Ohio State, or you went to the Cleveland Clinic.
Yeah.
And I knew a bunch of people that went to the Mayo Clinic up in Minnesota, but really, like, your first options for really extensive care were either going to Columbus or going to Cleveland. Ruby Memorial in Morgantown has gotten exponentially better over the years.
They've done a lot of improvements up there since I was a kid, for sure.
And their West Virginia University is doing some kind of leading edge research stuff too. Ultrasound guided brain surgery, that they're doing some really cutting edge stuff, and they're really expanding their reach and their influence inside of the communities that you and I know and grew up in.
That's cool. Yeah, it's it was something. I mean, as far as like the experience with it, the hospital I think did really good. I can't fault what happened. When it first happens, you're instantly like, you guys should have saved him. I'm very angry, and I tried to avoid going through that part of it. But with us, when we were waiting for the autopsies for so long, we were like, okay, what's up? Why is it like this?
Yeah.
And then it was one of those things that the more research I got into it, and the more talks I had, and different medical professionals like yourself, I came to find out that as far as their end of it, being DIC being what it is, they did their absolute best, especially with a surgery that's that large, because she had a full liver transplant. So when you're taking half of your organs out, as far as size wise, and replacing them, and doing all the work that they did, it's amazing that they were able to do as much with her before she passed as they did. Once I saw like the progression, and the family friend that was a medical nurse, she explained, and I've talked to a few other people, and everybody said they did everything they could. They worked the problem, from the time frame when it started to when it finished, and the testing you're describing, and procedures that they did. And when it was all over, like, you had the doctors and the nurses and everybody in tears, because everybody was just devastated with how quickly it progressed and how well she had done. Because her testing for like for the organs and everything was perfect. Like, as far as all the descriptions I heard from everybody, was like, you don't get better results than what your mom has for an organ donor. And we were all like, sweet, made plans for after it was over. And then, just life hits you, things happen. It's just one of those things that you go through, you being as young as you were. I can only imagine not knowing yourself after growing up and being old guys like we are, understanding life and, kind of dealing with that. But me at 35, dude, I was devastated. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I went into depression. You lose a parent, and like we said, it's something you can't really talk about to people, and if they haven't been through it to understand.
Yeah.
And you just go through that wide range of stuff. So over the years, I've kind of, I don't think that the medical industry has made mistakes with it. But my thing that I run into all the time is what can we do to, maybe pinpoint it a little better as far as more efficient testing or even different type of testing. And that's where I've kind of reached out to medical professionals to see, is there anything that's being done? Or I've talked to hematology schools, different ones, and reached out. I haven't received anything back from them still, but just those kind of questions is what I've always had with it. Is
Yeah.
there any type of testing that they've developed? But
And the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So
mhm,
if you have a hematologist, maybe not necessarily locally, but local enough where you
yeah,
can shoot an email to, once a week, hit them up with an email.
yeah.
And
I've gotten pretty close to being that guy.
yeah, and you can be respectful and you can be nice and and still be forceful at the same time
Yeah.
and say, hey, I'm trying to learn, I'm trying to be an advocate in the community, I'm trying to sort through my feelings, I'm all these different aspects and angles, and you can still be respectful to the people that you're asking questions to,
Hmm.
until you get answers.
Yeah. Well, and
And
I think that's the trouble for a lot of it is they don't really
that,
have many answers.
yeah, and the hardest part, you know, other than trying to get in touch with them and get them to respond to you, is them saying, we don't know.
Yeah.
Is them saying we don't know. And that's probably the number one complaint out of the emergency room that we get. I'm an ER nurse. That's probably the number one complaint that we get is, well, you guys can't figure out what's wrong with me.
Yeah.
Given our situation in my field, you know, in the emergency room, we try to find the big bads that are going to kill you quickly, that might kill you while you are here in the hospital with me.
Right.
If we can rule those out, then we can set you on a path with a primary care doctor, with a hematologist, with a nephrologist, with a pulmonologist, with an oncologist, all of those different things. Like, we can set you on the path. And the emergency room, unfortunately, in the past several years, is more of the gateway to specialty care than primary care.
It's surprising to me as far as like um a lot of the times, like my instance with my mom, how many specialists there are
Oh yeah,
and what each individual one does. And then you have people that come in, they're like, well, you're a doctor. Well, they may be a doctor in primary care or whatever their field is, but to be a specialist, it changes your whole outlook as far as, your job, period.
yeah,
But for people to understand that, it's just like, telling an NBA player, well, just go play football. It's no big deal.
yeah. Well,
You're an athlete. Just go play football.
well, Nate Robinson is proof of that. He got
Yeah.
knocked out
Yeah.
last week. That video is circulating everywhere.
Oh,
Here,
yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
guy who was a pro athlete and got worked.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
it's something that people really like. They attack the medical field, and it's always the same thing. And in difficult situations, people are going to gravitate towards, what's the easiest to blame or what's the easiest path to go with. And for us, I think, we made a really big effort to not, blame the hospital and do those kind of things when we were going through it. So,
right,
it's something because those doctors, I mean, you're talking, she was 2 years in this process.
yeah,
So she knew the doctors. They were, I would assume they were friends by the time it was all said and done,
yeah,
with how my mom, it was just, if you didn't like her, you didn't talk to her. But if she liked you and you liked her, then you guys were friends. That was just the end of it.
yeah,
So For her, she met all the specialists and everything, and it was nice to see like an inner view of which you hate being there, but you see an interview of how hospitals really work and the specialties that everybody has. And for people that like, I'm sure you're the same, people that really care about their job, you do really hard work to be, as best you can at it.
Yeah.
And there's certain things that you have abilities to do that, somebody may not be able to do as well. And that's just all training and specialties. You know what I mean?
It's funny. So, two two quick stories. I remember I wasn't a brand new nurse. I'd been a nurse for maybe 2 years, and I was working my second job at the time in a different emergency room. And I remember we had to call in a surgeon for a patient in the emergency room, and they came in and they're like, "Oh, my kid's sick at home. My wife's stressed and frazzled. I've been in clinic all day. Like, I'm going to see this patient, and if they need surgery, great, we'll do it. If not, I'm going to get out of here." And I teased him and I said, "Well, you're a doctor." Like, he's like, "No, no, no, no. My kid needs a real doctor." And here's a guy who's a surgeon, right? But they don't do ear infections. They don't
Yeah.
do strep throat, right? So I found that rather funny. Um, I did a recording with a friend on Tuesday, coworker, colleague, a guy I like, and we were talking about some of the nuance of nursing, and we can kind of extrapolate that to medicine as a whole. And one of the comments that was made was, there's more to medicine than just medicine,
Yep.
right? There's a lot of things that medicines can do. There's a lot, like, you've got a pill, a potion, a powder for almost everything known, right?
Mhm.
Those only do so much. There's something to be said about a healthcare provider, whether it's a nurse's aide, a nurse, a physician, a surgeon, whoever. It could even be the housekeeper, right? There's something to be said for somebody that's willing to sit down by the bed and hold your hand and listen to your story, or see you in the hallway and stop you and give you a hug or ask you how you're doing. There's more to medicine than just medicine.
Yep.
And sometimes even the things that aren't medicine are the best things for people.
I always think of the movie Patch Adams. That was one to me that, those are doctors. You know what I mean?
Right.
And and as I've gotten older, like I guess it's just getting old, but you start to realize like, like for yourself, male nurses is something that was always, when I was growing up, is all your mercer. They'd have all these comments. Well, nowadays, with COVID and all the things that are going on, there's certain things that everybody's putting in as far as their time and their risks. And I want to thank you for doing your job, by the way, for dealing with all this craziness going on. But the like just like for mom, the doctor's taking the time, like you say, smile, a little bit extra time. I've seen moments with my kid when she was first born that kind of changed my perspective because I'm terrified, she's terrified, and they're cool, calm, collective, make a joke, make her laugh, make her feel comfortable. And then, the process eases out rather than come
Right.
in, stick my kid with a needle, walk away while she screams in pain or whatever it is. So,
Yeah.
you know, like you said, it's something that, as far as the public side compared to the medical field, that's probably one of the things I've always appreciated the most is when, you know, doctors or nurses or any medical professional takes time to do their little, eh, I guess the best way to explain it is their unique capabilities of making smiles or, doing their best at, what their skill sets are.
Yeah.
And going above and beyond that just to give you, a pat on the back or a joke or something. And I think our area, as far as the medical field in West Virginia, hopefully is better than they used to be because that wasn't the case as far as my experiences with them compared to other places. And you
Right.
could definitely see like a philosophy and, you know, patient outreach and stuff that different hospitals do.
Yeah.
So that's good to hear, places. And then, just in the end of it, somebody wanting to be good at their job, they want to do the best they can.
Yeah. It amazes me how much, like, medicine, the science of medicine is the same no matter where you go, just about, right? There's common consensus, there's best practices. We all know what they are. They're published everywhere, right? But it's funny to see the little nuances between communities,
Yeah.
right? Like, I distinctly remember, growing up in West Virginia, and one of our primary care doctors would take payment in, veggies and moonshine.
Yeah.
And, right? Nobody else is going to do that, but then again, that was also 30 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Times are a little different
Yeah.
nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah. It astounds me, like, the emergency room is a totally different beast from every other area of medicine. It really is. Simply because we see everything.
Yeah.
We see everything. Now, medical floors and surgical floors, they know that people are coming in sick. They get a brief heads up from the emergency room or from an admitting doctor. They get a few minutes to prepare most of the time. Oncology floors, you're dealing with a cancer patient.
Mm-hmm.
Hematology floors, typically combined with oncology, you're probably getting a liver patient or a blood cancer. And that's part of the reason why I love the emergency room is that it's different all the time. So I don't know that I could do a medical floor. I don't know that I could do in any of those other areas. Am I perfectly skilled? Am I perfectly capable? Well, maybe not perfectly, but am I capable? Am I capable? Am I skilled? And that answer is yes.
Yeah.
And that answer is yes. And I can be trained. I'm a pretty good dog. You give me food and you rub my belly, we're good. Right? Yep. But there's still a learning curve there. I wish that if there was one thing that I could probably change in healthcare, it would be the public's perception of the effort required between, not just between hospitals or systems, but the effort required even between departments inside of the same hospital.
I think people get lost on the translation of lives to time. And it's like you say, you need to fix me, take care of me. I'm broken. I want it done, and I want it done now.
Yep.
Well, not only do you have regulations and things that you normally have to go through just because of laws and everything else, but then you have the back factor of it is, there are humans involved in this. So not only do you not want to make a mistake in your job, and you may double check things or different departments check each other, but that transfer of information doesn't happen like that. Somebody has to fill this out, take the test, take your blood pressure, look at your x-rays, look at this. Well, if there's 30 people in there, guess what? They have to do that 30 times.
Yep.
So they look like they're not doing anything, but they're continually repetitively doing the same thing. Yep. And the poor people that sit at the front desk in the emergency rooms, I think, take the biggest brunt of anything I've ever seen, as far as angry people or people in pain, or, and that's the thing that I would assume you guys realize too, just with your job, is, people in pain sometimes lash out and say things just because of the situation. So it's not always their fault, that they're doing something wrong in their mind. But for the public, when you've got, like you say, you've got a smaller community that you work with, you still have 15 people involved front to back, somewhere, shape, or form, between billing to insurance to, whatever.
Yeah.
And that process just doesn't magically happen,
Yeah.
And it's just like the government, everybody's like,
oh,
this. Yeah, there's always a process because, in the medical industry, it's life or death, literally. I mean, that's what you guys are dealing with day to day, and little infection and a little cut, and all of a sudden it's a life and death situation a couple weeks later.
Yeah.
So, those things are what people kind of lose sight of. And it's just everybody wants everything right now so fast. And and they want it perfect the way they want it, and Amazon Prime and whatever else everybody's doing. So, you know, you can't
Amazon
Amazon
wants to
Prime
get into
healthcare.
medicine.
So just get over it. Phew, Jesus, I hope not, man. Oh my God.
You know,
That'd be insane.
where was I? I can't remember what city I was in. You know, the local Walmart had a walk-in clinic.
Yeah.
And it was Walmart branded. They had a PA, a physician assistant, in the clinic, and you could walk in and get seen at your local Walmart.
That's crazy. That's absolutely insane to me. And like, we're old enough to remember, like, the handbag and the doctor's visit to your house for,
Mm-hmm.
smaller communities and stuff like that. And those were the things that made doctors prestigious back then,
Yeah.
because no matter what the situation was, they would travel, they would get to these homes because they lived with these people, they knew who they
Mm-hmm.
were. And then as time progressed and things built up and industrialization and all that, it's kind of gotten lost on, the doctors and nurses. And just like growing up with you and, going to school together, I don't see you as, Zach's the nurse, Zach's my cross country buddy, and, just all those life things
Yeah.
that we shared. And, when you go to work, you probably would seem like a totally different person to me because you're in your work mode. I mean, you're doing your job, you're doing the things you got to do,
That
just
is
like
true.
anybody else.
That is true.
And people just they just don't put the dots together, and stress makes a difference. But at some point in time, people really need to sit back and just say, you know, look for the best out of somebody, because you'll get the best when you show them gratitude or appreciation or anything. Because I know
Yeah.
I've always done a better job when people were like, thank you, or, you're doing a great job. And I felt good about it. But,
Yep.
you're not going to help discharge a guy screaming and yelling at you any faster if he's got, a splinter, just because he's being a jerk. And the
Yeah.
guy over here needs a heart transplant. So, sorry, you feel bad. You sit there, be quiet. We got this person to take care of. So,
Yeah.
it's just how it
And
goes.
yeah, I appreciate when people, when I have to go into a room that I haven't been in for a few minutes and say, hey, my apologies. I've been having to take care of somebody else that needed me more. And people, they almost shudder when I say that, because they're like, well, I came in for this. And well, the guy next door is, actively dying.
Yeah.
So Bobby, do you have any links that you'd like to share, or any advocacy groups that you're a part of, or anything you need to shout out and prop up?
No, honestly, I think this time around, man, if you have any friends, as far as work colleagues or anybody that has any information, my email is thetatermaker@gmail.com.
Okay.
Anything that anybody could possibly send, or as far as like charity setups, any hematology groups, I've reached out. I've continued to send emails. So I don't know if it's because of the name or what it is, but as far as response, anything that anybody could get to me would be great, because
Okay.
I'm having bupkis luck.
Okay. So for those of you watching and listening, let's do what we can to help Bob here. His name, the Tater Maker, is on the Zoom window. If you're watching, if you're listening, the Tater Maker, all one word, @gmail.com. Bobby, I appreciate your time this morning. It has been wonderful talking with you, and I think we've got much better video and audio this time that'll work out for us.
Sounds good, man. Sounds good. I appreciate it. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Yeah, man. Okay, everybody, like, comment, subscribe, share, do all the clicky things. Thanks.